Hello and welcome everyone to the Martial Energetics web show. I am Andrew and this is Dane. How you doing, Dane?
I am doing great.
Wonderful. Our final chapter in the Dirty Trick series. Today we want to talk about the groin target. So, Dane, why don't you start us off?
So the groin target is like these other things we talked about in the Dirty Trick series, biting, the eye target. This is also something that is uh, widely misunderstood in a number of ways. So um, the first important thing I think to understand about the groin target, uh, like with the eye target, like with biting, is that even if you wouldn't do this yourself, it's still a hazard. It doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't do it. It's still a
Mm-hmm.
hazard to you. So if you if you're training in some kind of combat sport or system or style where this is not a valid target, uh, if you want that training to be applicable to a self-defense situation, then you need to take into account that this is a hazard, and you need to train accordingly. Train in such a way as to guard against this type of injury. With
Mm.
there's a with the groin target, one thing that is really prevalent is there's a lot of I guess you could say machismo about it. That like
Mm.
a real fighter would never do that, or a real fighter that wouldn't work on a real fighter. Basically, or the kinds of attitudes that get expressed a lot in the martial arts world. And um, what's important to understand is that in a self defense situation, number one, it's life or death by definition. That is the definition of a self defense situation. If it's not life or death, if it's avoidable, if it's participatory, it's not self
Mm.
defense. It's mutual combat. It's illegal. So if we're talking about self defense, we're talking about life or death, and those kind of uh, considerations uh, about what what would be the sort of honorable or the manly thing to do go out the window. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and and the sole benchmark is effectiveness in terms of injury to the human body. And then the second thing related to that is much like I said with the eye target. It might be the sort of thing that a trained fighter would not do, but how about a desperate person who's trying to injure you in any way they can accomplish,
Yeah.
and will do things that trained fighters wouldn't. That's an important consideration. So if you want your training to be applicable to a self-defense situation, you have to train as if this is an actual hazard, and defend accordingly. And and that will change the way that you train when in terms of stand-up fighting. You're dealing with possibly being kneed or kicked. In grappling, um, it's there's if you watch uh, if you watch MMA, UFC, grappling kind of stuff, then you can see plenty of opportunities where if either one wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
they could grab their opponent's groin, but they don't, and therefore they train around that fact. Like it's something I saw just recently in a fight that just really brought this home was a guy had another guy pinned down in side mount, and he was basically putting his groin in his opponent's hand. uh,
Yeah.
Obviously, relying on the fact that, oh, this is not a valid target, I don't have to worry about protecting it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a separate but related topic that what comes out of you under pressure is what you train for. You'll do what you train. So people
Mm-hmm.
often say, "Oh, well, yeah, I do that in the ring, but I wouldn't do that, in to save my life." But there are numerous examples that we could point out where that wasn't the case, where people who are trained in competition protocols resort to those protocols in violent confrontations, and it doesn't go well. So we know
Mm-hmm.
that happens. To say that it wouldn't happen to you, or I'm too smart for that, or whatever, is kind of naive.
Yeah, they're well trained to obey the rules in the most stressful situation of their whole life. Being on stage in front of 10,000 people and someone's really trying to take my head off. This is the life they're preparing for. So when it happens in reality and their adrenaline dumps, they just they go straight to their training, like you mentioned.
Right. I mean, the whole principle is you do what you train. Otherwise, what's the point of training? Or you're going to like train, spend all this time training, and then when you get in a situation, you're going to do something totally different. What's the point of
Mm-hmm.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's actually not how it works. You do what you train. Uh, so the second consideration about this is,
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't work on a real fighter, which and I've actually seen I've seen at least one demonstration of this on YouTube. It's really disingenuous, where basically they're like testing out uh, self-defense techniques shown by other instructors,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a couple of guys in an MMA gym wearing cups. One of them has the other one in a reverse choke, and the guy in the choke is swinging backwards, hitting the guy who's holding him in the groin, but he's flailing around. He's not hitting effectively. He's not. It has no accuracy, and the guy holding him is wearing a cup, so he's just standing there going, "Oh, what? See, that doesn't hurt. That's nothing." Whereas empirically, if you look at it, if you look at the the realm of sporting competition, where ostensibly the groin target is off limits. We're not trying to hit each other. In fact, we're trying to avoid hitting each other there. Let's just look at what happens when there is an accidental groin injury.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
ends the match. That's
Yeah.
when it happens by accident. So what if we're actually trying to access this target?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be that much more effective than when it happens by accident. So um, to say that it wouldn't work on a real fighter, if for and in the context of sporting competition, this is even with groin protection. They're wearing groin protection, and still an accidental groin injury is a fight-ending injury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if uh, if somebody's trying to do it on purpose, if you are not wearing groin protection, obviously the consequences are going to be that much more severe, and and this lends all the more weight to the idea that if you want your training to be effective in a self-defense context, you need to train as if this is an actual hazard, and protect yourself accordingly, and particularly avoid the the habit of basing your strategies around the assumption that your opponent is not going to access this target.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Trust no one.
right, there's a very old saying in martial arts: GYG, guard your groin, and this is basically what it comes down to. Um,
So, what are the components of this target? Why don't you tell us some details about what we're looking at?
yeah, that's another thing that is uh, not widely understood. Is we think of the groin target as external male genitalia,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and not to underestimate the significance of this target, because injury to the external genitalia certainly can be devastating. Um, but here's what people really need to understand about this, because this gives rise to this is a question that comes up a lot
Mm.
in self-defense training, and in fact, Tim Larkin, in one of his training videos, it was like he was training a group of people in a seminar, um, pretty much all of whom were beginners in self-defense training, and when he's talking about the groin target, somebody asks, "Oh, well, what if what if the person attacking you doesn't have external genitalia? Like what then is this going to work?" And Tim's response to that is, he said, "Okay, and it's about the group was about 50-50 men and women." He said, "Okay, any women in here want to take a full-on shin kick to the groin?" Uh, it's
Yeah.
it's the
No, no one
external
does.
point being the external genitalia are kind of irrelevant
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
context of what we're trying to accomplish with the groin target. And the groin target uh, consists of the pelvic floor, the pubic bone, the pelvic floor, also known as the perineum, the pubic
Hmm.
bone, the inguinal groove where the leg connects to the body, um, the front of it, and as well as the external genitalia. And the
Hmm.
reason that all of these are lumped together as a single target is because they all cause the same type of spinal reflex when they're
Mm.
injured. The body will move in a predictable way to groin injury. Um, and as you mentioned, I actually like to. I think America's Funniest Home Videos is something that everybody, at least everybody born before a certain
Our
year, I
age.
guess, can relate to this. We all know what the groin reaction looks like
Hmm.
from that show. But of course, what usually is happening when you see those kinds of blooper reels and, oh, you got hit in the groin, it's funny, we laugh, right? Because yeah, it hurts, it causes a reaction, but we know it's a superficial injury.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but we're in a self-defense context, we're not going for superficial injury, we're going for catastrophic injury, we're going for a decrement of function,
Mm.
meaning meaning we're aiming to break the pubic symphysis, we're aiming to rupture the pelvic floor, we're aiming to rupture the testicles. So the uh, the if we are looking at this in terms of catastrophic injury, the plumbing is not the target. We are going for we're aiming for basically we're aiming for center mass with as much force as possible, trying to break something inside.
Mm.
So
Mm.
uh, if on top of that you happen to get injuries to the external genitalia, those are certainly devastating. If you've ever seen, a ruptured testicle in like a sports injury context or something like that, you can't walk it off. It will
No,
incapacitate a person.
no.
Um, and in a self-defense context, that is the aim is incapacitation.
So what are the basic ways we can attack this target?
Well, with the groin target, obviously you can strike it with any appropriate kind of body weapon. Um, in which case, we're trying to apply blunt trauma to, as I said, rupture the pelvic floor, fracture the pubic symphysis, uh, rupture the testicles, uh, as kind of as bonus points, I guess. Um, and Uh, besides that, in the case of the external genitalia on men, uh, we the something that the eye target and the groin target have in common is that they are the most sensitive and vulnerable targets on the body, meaning that they are capable of being injured with the force that you can generate with one hand,
Mm. Mm.
and it doesn't necessarily require a full body weight strike to injure the target. Of course, we're going for maximum damage, maximum effect. So if we have the option, the luxury of putting a full body weight strike into this target, that's what we're going to do. Hit it as hard as humanly possible. But if your options are limited, if you're not able to put your body weight into this target, if you're pinned down or whatever, this target is still capable of being injured by the force that you can generate just in your hand. And that gives rise to the holy trinity of attacking the groin. We have a holy trinity for the eyes of poke slash gouge, all accomplishable with the force of the hand. And in the case of the external genitalia, we have the holy trinity of squeeze, twist, pull. So when we train to attack this target, if we're striking, we are going for a full body weighted strike. If we are grabbing, it's not just like honk and let go. It's grab as tight as you can, squeeze, twist, pull, and the nature of the spinal reflex to that will be such that in order to mitigate the effects of the injury, the individual's body will try to move in the direction of the applied force. So not only does this is this capable of applying incapacitating injury, it's also a great way to control the physical mass of your opponent. So when and it's even if you want to go looking for examples of this, if you're not convinced this will work, you can there's actually a pretty prominent video of this out there where it's like a trained fighter. It's actually this exact situation where two guys are grappling. One of them is a trained fighter, the other one isn't. The trained fighter starts to get the upper hand, and he's got the guy pinned down, and then you hear him saying, he's got him in like a headlock, and you hear him saying, "Oh, stop grabbing my dick, bro! Stop grabbing my dick!" And he starts hitting him. But then after like just a few seconds later, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, begging the guy to let him go.
Yeah.
And this again is not a life or death situation. It's two guys kind of playing around, and it's really, it could be considered an extreme form of pain compliance if you're not causing physical injury. But to think that this wouldn't work against a trained fighter, or if you're going to have the mental fortitude to tough it out and walk it off, you're going to be incapacitated. You're going to lose the ability to breathe. You're going to lose the ability to stand up. You're going to lose the ability to function effectively if this target is actually injured.
Yeah.
So for self-defense purposes, it's extremely important to take this into account, both as a hazard to make sure it doesn't happen to you, and also as a target, because much like we said with the eye target, if you're saving your life, the most vulnerable and target should not be the target of last resort. It should be the target of first resort. Of course, there's a matter of accessibility and availability. You always want to go for the nearest target available, but given a choice between targets that are equally available, take the one that is going to cause the most severe injury. So if I know Master Ken entered the dojo, it's a joke. The show's a joke. It's all funny. But if you have the groin and you need to save your life, there should be no hesitation there. And the only way for there to be no hesitation there is if you actually put this in your training, train realistically, treat this like it is a target on yourself and others, and train accordingly, so that your training will be there for you when you need it.
Oh, yes, it's one of those things that we avoid in many cases, especially in most traditional schools. it's just an off limits target. They talk about it flippantly often, like, oh yeah, you can always just hit them in the groin, and it's not a target that's easily accessible in many cases. So it's not a go-to target. It's a target of opportunity, not a target of simplicity.
Yeah, like every the availability is the most important consideration. You have to
Mm-hmm,
go after
mm-hmm,
a target's most available, and yeah, you're right. It is often talked about just kind of flippantly, like like, oh, it's like it's going to be easy to do, um, or it's it's considered comical.
mm-hmm.
If and it's it's not trivial if a person is protecting their groin effectively, it's not going to be accessible as a target.
Mm-hmm.
But um, it there is there tends to be a lot of resistance to this for a number of reasons, which is what we have to overcome in our training. We because for one thing, it just makes people uncomfortable to go near someone's groin or to have
Mm-hmm.
someone go near their groin. I mean, that's just pretty common, and particularly with men, there tends to be an element of homophobia. Um, and it's considered more and of course in movies and television all the time, it's a comic relief. It's like, somebody gets hit in the groin and they make a face and everybody laughs, and then a few minutes later they're fine. um,
Mm-hmm.
but when in a self-defense context, uh, we need to treat this as a potentially very serious injury and train accordingly.
Yeah. Now, one thing I really need to mention before we finish up, the spinal reflex. So you have to really understand what's going to happen when you attack these targets. And by watching the sports videos, watching any instructional videos that show this accurately, you can see that when the groin is attacked, the pelvic shoots back, but the face shoots forward. So it sets you up for another attack, even if you didn't quite get the groin attack. Maybe you glanced it and the guy shoots his hips back, but now his face is forward. So you're setting up for your next attack, your next strike. You're always moving to the next advantage point. So don't think that one hit's going to take care of this problem. You hit that, and then what's my next opportunity? I need to do 2, 3, 8 injuries before I can safely walk away from this situation. So if you're getting the point where you have to use the groin attack to escape the self-defense situation, then you just keep going. And yeah, they might be screaming and writhing in pain, and they can still get up. Like you said, you can get hit in the groin, and for a few seconds, you're down. You crunch up, your whole body freezes. But if you can rally and you don't get a real serious injury from that, just getting tapped or something, you can just get back up and grit your teeth and keep going and keep fighting. So that's what happens to a lot of MMA fighters when they do get hit. They take it and they sit there for a minute or two, and then they just stand up and flare their nostrils and continue to fight because they're okay enough. It wasn't such a bad hit. So you have to anticipate that as well. It's not a perfect target, but it's definitely an effective target if done properly.
Right. It's not a magical off button that if you touch it, the person will just instantly collapse. Uh, Violence, by its very nature, is inherently chaotic and unpredictable. So we want to avoid the fallacy of thinking, oh, all I need to do is just hit him in the groin and that's it. Uh, we need to understand that your attack might not get an injury. It might miss. It might not be effective, and we need to be prepared to follow up with further injuries until we reach a point of non-functionality, until the threat is eliminated. Um, at the same time, um, we also want to understand that this is not, if a groin injury is not by any means a trivial or superficial thing. In fact, and the spinal reflex is is significant too, because yeah, the spinal reflex to the groin reaction tends to put the body in a more exposed position. The spinal reflex for the groin reaction actually exposes the throat.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding the spinal reflexes, having a correct expectation of what will happen if you cause an injury is important. And just as I mean, this is kind of an unusual occurrence. Uh, but as I said, violence is inherently unpredictable. Really, anything could happen. But there was an instance that I heard about where the spinal reflex to a groin reaction actually killed someone. Um, I have to admit I didn't see the actual news story myself. I heard it from a reliable source where
Mm-hmm.
at a tennis match, I don't remember if it was one of the players or a bystander or somebody, got hit in the groin with a like 120-mile-an-hour tennis ball shot. I don't know. It was fast. It was significant.
Yeah.
The groin reaction actually caused the person to pitch forward and slam their head into the ground, and they died from a
Oh,
traumatic brain injury. Um,
wow.
and and this is not to say that this is a predictable or an easily reproducible result, but just to point out that the spinal reflex reaction to a groin injury can be very significant
Mm-hmm.
in proportion to the severity of the injury, and uh, the the spinal reflex reaction to the groin injury, what happens after the groin is injured, can very easily contribute to further injury, which we going back again, we don't want to assume that you just hit him in the groin and problem solved. We need to be prepared to layer injuries on top of one another until we reach a clear state of non-functionality. So
Mm-hmm.
um, basically, we just want to have a clear understanding. We don't want to be under any illusions. We don't want to be operating from a realm of fantasy. We want to have a clear understanding based on physics and physiology of the nature of this target. We want to and if we want our training to be effective in a self-defense context, we want to train to both attack and defend this target effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, Dane. Well, this has been 3 episodes of shocking material. So thank you very much for going through it so clinically and methodically. And just real quick wrap up. Biting was our first one. You don't want to bite other people. It's very dangerous to you.
Not
Just
safe.
doing the act is a hazard to yourself. But it's also something to watch out for. So we talked about that. Second one is the eye target. Serious. You're something serious going on if you're attacking someone in the eye. So don't use that target lightly. It's very traumatic injury if done properly, and it can be almost that magic button. You hit someone in the eye with a whole knuckle, and it can be devastating and blinding and puts them out of commission very quickly. We've seen those videos. And finally, the groin. Well, every man knows. Pretty much every man knows they've grown up. This happened to them at least once in their lives. They know how shocking it can be to just be touched. So, but the proper way to attack is full force, through the target, not just on the surface. So everyone, be careful out there. We wish you safety and happy, healthy lives. We also have a Chai Tea Tai Chi series, which is about health and wellness and very safe and loving. We just want to help you there. Here, well, this is about real terrible things. And thanks very much for going through it with us, Dane. Any last words?
Yeah, stay safe out there. Have fun in your training. If you're training for self-defense, take it seriously. If you want to train for health and wellness, check out our Chai Tea Tai Chi channel. And if you want to see more good content like this, let us know, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. I was Andrew, and that was Dane. Have a good night.
Bye.